welcome or welcome back to the McDonald Chronicles. My name is Gianna if you're new, and I'm so happy you're here. Today we're going to talk all about what I have been reading postpartum. Okay, so let's jump right in. I apologize for the echo. There's nothing really in here right now, so it just is what it is. So I am currently almost 4 months postpartum, and this is my second baby. Ironically, I started really getting back into reading again right before I had my first one. So I didn't think this would be as challenging as it was, which we'll get to in a moment. If you watched my most recent video, you know that I sort of put together a little box of what I wanted to be reading postpartum. And I also have been doing something called the 3-book method, which I do plan on filming an update about, so stay tuned for that. I'm just going to go through the books that I read, which ones I think were good to read postpartum, which ones I would definitely skip next time and not recommend, and which series I wish I had found much, much sooner. So first and foremost, I read way more fiction than usual, and I think that's just the nature of it. Fiction, for me at least, is easier to read, and I find it usually more enjoyable than nonfiction. Not that I don't like nonfiction. Nonfiction is just sort of using an extra brain muscle. And so when you're postpartum and sleep deprived, it wasn't necessarily something that I always gravitated towards. So definitely you'll see a lot more fiction than nonfiction on this list, but I think that's very personal. For some people, fiction is a drag and they'd rather read way more nonfiction, and so this is my postpartum reads list. Hopefully you can gain something from it, but just do what works for you during this time. So the first thing I read was Wild Dark Shore. And I will say in this instance, I'm really glad that I went back to tracking my books on Goodreads. I'm not ranking them or rating them on Goodreads. I barely even update them at the right time. I typically go on there once I finish it and just say I'm reading it and then I finished it. But truthfully, without that, I would have no idea what I read. The first book that I read was Wild Dark Shore by Charlotte McConney. Yeah, McConney, I believe is how you say it. I will say I'm not sure this was the best choice. And I think that if I didn't have to read it for a book club that I was in, I don't think I would have picked it up. It's sort of dark. So basically the premise of this book is that a woman washes up on shore, getting into a boat crash on this island where Dominic and his 3 children live. And the purpose of this island, it's sort of a research facility where it's got this special structure that holds a bunch of things that will be extinct, plants that the world has come together and decided that they want to save. And she washes up on shore, and the sort of takes her in and takes care of her. And throughout the book, you sort of figure out that maybe she wasn't there by accident. There's something more that she was looking for. Clearly the family is hiding something. All of the researchers are gone. No one knows where they went, or at least the family's not saying exactly what happened. They're giving a story, but the woman sort of thinks there's something else going on. This book, I can appreciate why so many people loved it, and I think at a different point in my life, I would have loved it. I would have liked it more. I just felt it was just a little too dark, I think, to be the first book that I read right after having a baby when your hormones are all over the place. Or would I recommend to read it so soon after having a baby? No. Would I recommend reading it in general? I think it was well written, and I think it's interesting. The author wrote about how there is a real place, or there was a real place like this, and that was sort of the inspiration for this book, which I think is very interesting. The next book I read and finished, Emily Wilde's Compendium of Lost Tales. I don't think this was postpartum list at all. Was it? I really don't remember. But anyway, I loved this book. A+. If you have not read any of the Emily Wilde series and you enjoy, I guess you could call it like a cozy fantasy. It's got fae. What I love about it is the wit and banter between Emily and Wendell. I won't say too much about the plot of the 3rd book, because that sort of gives away what happens in 1 and 2, but essentially what you need to know about the series as a whole is Emily is a researcher, and she researches the fae, these mythical creatures. And so she spent her whole life essentially researching this fae, and she's very well known in her field. And so it's got that scholarly research piece to it, with banter, a little bit of romance, but not so much romance that I feel it's overpowering. It's very much, I feel like, focused on Emily and her personality. But I absolutely love this book, and I know that the series I will be rereading. I feel like the first you read the series, you're just enjoying it, kind of wanting to know what happens, and I think the second time I read through it, it will just be like a warm hug. So definitely recommend reading the series when you are postpartum. Definitely much different than Wild Dark Shore. Then I read the fifth book, I think. Yes, I believe it's the fifth book in the Chronicles of Narnia series. So I have never read the Chronicles of Narnia minus The Lion, Witch, and the Wardrobe when I was in elementary school. So I've been reading through the series, and so I'm on The Horse and His Boy, or I finished The Horse and His Boy right after Emily Wilde's encyclopedia, or right after Emily Wilde's Compendium of Lost Tales. And I really enjoyed it. I thought it was really good. I will say, and I think this just has to do like the hype sometimes, watching book reviews and sort of watching people reread old books, is I thought I would like the series as a whole much more. I like the series, I'm enjoying it, and I do think I'll enjoy reading it with my children one day, but I don't feel that, oh my gosh, I love it, that a lot of other people talk about when they read the series by C.S. Lewis. I'm glad that I'm reading it, and again, I am enjoying it. I think my expectations were so much higher. So in the fifth book, in The Horse and His Boy, so what I didn't realize about the Chronicles of Narnia until I started reading it is I just assumed we were following the Pevensies the entire time, but really we're not. I think the Pevensies really are only in the first 3 books, and then you sort of get introduced to other characters, cousins, things like that, and this one, I don't even think, and sort of is not out of left field because characters are there, but they are not the characters. This is the first time they've been introduced, the main characters in the book. And so I think this one actually has been put first in the series as far as when newer editions come out. I believe this was the first book, Horse and His Boy. Oh, this was listed as the 3rd book for me in the paperback series that I purchased. It is the 5th, I think, in publication order, which is how I'm reading them, because I feel like if that's how C.S. Lewis published them, that's how you're supposed to read them. I don't really think that's rocket science. I feel like there's a lot of videos out there that are like, you must read it in this way, and it's just, yeah, obviously. But I digress. So yeah, it's listed to be the 3rd book, but really it's the 5th one in publication. So it seems, it's not out of left field, but you're definitely introduced to new characters. So again, I did enjoy it. And I think the Chronicles of Narnia series as a whole is a great series to read when you're postpartum because it's easy. It doesn't require a lot of brain power. I mean, I'm sure there's themes and symbols and things like that if you wanted to analyze it, you could do that. But if you're just reading it to enjoy it, it's a great one to read when you're up late at night and you are tired and you're just trying to stay awake feeding a baby. And then I read 2 nonfiction books, just sort of lump them up together here. The first one is Laying Down the Rails, and then the second one is The Happiest Baby on the Block. So not exactly groundbreaking nonfiction. Happiest Baby on the Block was just recommended to me, and it was an interesting read. I think if you're a parent of a young baby, like a new baby, or you're about to be a parent of a new baby, I think a great read, but take that with a grain of salt. Parenting is so personal that I may have enjoyed this book, and that's up to you completely. And then Laying Down the Rails is something big in the Charlotte Mason world as far as habit training goes. It's very, very thin. I found it to be very easy to read and very interesting, and it sort of kind of helped me ease back into reading nonfiction when I was postpartum and just not really wanting to read something like a heavier nonfiction like a Charlotte Mason, which would have required a lot more brain power that I frankly just didn't have at the time. And then I read my first Woodhouse, Du Butler's Burgle Banks. This was the only Woodhouse that my library actually had at the time, and I thought it was amazing. I loved it. It was funny. I was laughing. I thought it was very clever. So Woodhouse, I would highly recommend if you are postpartum. It's the only one I've read by him, and I definitely plan on reading more. I thoroughly enjoyed it. In this book, Du Butler's Burgle Banks, we're basically following, it's sort of like a heist where a banker is in trouble. He realizes his bank is about to go under, and then all of this series of events sort of ensues. I don't say too much, but basically it's a large miscommunication in a way. Like, you know a lot more of what's happening than what the characters do, which I think is always so fun. But it all sort of stems around the fact that this heist, the first part of it is like the banker is in trouble because his bank is going under, and this sort of held together this entire town, I think, for decades. And then the second part of it is there's this butler who basically is, I don't want to say a mob boss, but sort of, where he's done lots and lots of heists and he has his eyes set on this bank. And there's a little romance involved as well. So it was really enjoyable. I highly recommend. And then my next 3 were all the book club that I'm in, which we focus on reading mysteries and thrillers. So first up being Too Old for This. This is a book about an older woman who used to be a serial killer, and she obviously has never been caught. So she is living in her home, and someone comes to interview her. So in her past, while she was never caught, she was arrested. They tried to pin a murder on her. And so she got all of this national attention, and the cops basically think that she did it, but they didn't have enough evidence to prove it. So she's grown, she's lived her life, she moved to a new place, just sort of been going on her merry way. And in the first chapter, a journalist shows up, and she's a documentary sort of on how false accusations ruin people's lives, because she thinks that this woman is innocent and that, you know, the cops going over sort of ruined her life. Little does she know the old woman actually killed all these people. What is her name? Lottie. That's right. Lottie is the woman's name. So Lottie actually killed these people, and more than the cops thought. But the journalist comes to her kind of pitching a document, you know, I know you're innocent, sort of prove that you're innocent through this documentary and see how this has affected your life. And Lottie refuses. She says no. And then she kills the journalist when the journalist refuses. So now Lottie's covering up this murder, and, you know, it's just sort of another chain of events, kind of is thrust back into this serial killing life because of this one thing. I did enjoy it. I thought it was very fun to read. I will say I wasn't super thrilled with the ending, which obviously I won't say why, because that would give away what the ending was. I sort of wanted it to go one way and it went the other, expecting, and I don't know if I loved that part of it. And then I read Magpie Murders by Anthony Horowitz. I have never read any of his books before. I loved this book. If you like Agatha Christie, older mysteries, I think you'll love this as well. I think based on what everyone on my book club said, really, really loved it, and some of us thought it was a little bit confusing. I loved it. And basically what happens in this book is you have I think she's an editor. I'm not sure if she's an editor or a publisher. And her most famous author writes these mystery novels, very similar to Agatha Christie. So it starts off with her reading through this edit of the mystery novel. And so she starts reading through this novel and she sort of says, you know, this book changed my life. And then it sort of stops there. And then you actually read the book that she's reading. And what I loved about this was I was reading through the mystery novel and I sort of forgot that the whole point of this book was we're supposed to be figuring out how this book changed the editor or the publisher's life. And then it just stops. The mystery novel within the novel stops at a point. And I was like, wait a second. And then it goes back to real time, I guess you could say, about this changed her life and sort of the events that are unfolding because of this book. And you sort of go back to the book at the end. I loved it. I absolutely loved the format of it, the book within a book. I also really enjoy reading books where the main characters work in books, like librarians, publishers, editors, authors, things like that. I just find it to be really interesting. But I love the ending of this book. I think the ending of this book just sort of proves that even if you do the right thing, you're not necessarily going to be rewarded for it. Society doesn't always go with you because you're doing the right thing. And I just love that idea, especially when sometimes you just, obviously you want to do the right thing. Obviously you want to do the right thing and you should do the right thing. And everyone would say, if you surveyed them on, yeah, you should do the right thing. But then when push comes to shove, human nature kind of shows a different side. So I love this book. I would definitely recommend it. I will say, if you're not used to reading an older mystery, but you're not used to reading the Agatha Christie old mystery style, then the novel within a novel might not be for you during postpartum, because it's not that it takes more energy, but it's just written in a different way. And so if you're not used to that, it might seem a little jarring and it might not be something that you're enjoying. But if you are and you like those types of mysteries, I definitely recommend this one. And then I read Her Last Breath by Taylor Adams. This follows a story of two best friends, one of whom really enjoys, I don't know if caving is the proper term for it, but she goes into caves, which I'm getting claustrophobic just thinking about. She goes into caves, explores them in the darkness. And so she convinces her best friend to go with her. And then what happens is a murder, basically, and one of the friends is fighting for their life. And so the police officer is interviewing one of the friends. So you're going back and forth between, what happened to the girls from their point of view, and then what's happening with the police officer interviewing the girl that's in the hospital and what the police officer thinks happened. And I liked and hated this book all at the same time. I liked the writing of this book, and what I love about it is I had guessed the twist very early on, but because the author did such a good job with the writing, I dismissed my twist. I said, there's no way, that is ridiculous. I think that's a compliment to the author to have me guess the twist. Yeah, that's what happened. guess it correctly, but then spend the whole book basically making me disprove and question it to then have that actually be it in the end. And it makes sense. And so it was in other books where I guessed the twist immediately. I was like, yeah, that's obviously it. And I didn't enjoy the rest of the book. I had guessed it, but then the whole book convinced me I was being ridiculous and there's no way that could have been what actually happened. And then when it was, I was, that's what I thought happened in the beginning. So I think that's kudos to Taylor Adams. I enjoyed the writing and I enjoyed the book per se, but the caving was too much. I felt so claustrophobic the entire time I was reading it, and I found myself just reading it so fast because I wanted to get to the end of the book to know what happened, because I could not spend one more minute inside this cave. And again, that's kudos to the author and kudos to the writing, because I really felt like I was there, and I felt like I felt claustrophobic while I was reading it. And so maybe not the best read for postpartum, unless that doesn't bother you. But it's not really an uplifting read. If you're wanting a page turner, I do think it's a page turner. And he has other books. I don't know, I think Last Word maybe is one. But so he has other books, maybe start with one of those. I definitely will be reading more of them, but this one was good. The kid really got to me. And then finally, the series that I wish I had discovered sooner was the Emma M. Lyon series. I know this series has been everywhere and people have been raving about it. I actually asked for the paperback set for Mother's Day, so books 1 through 8 that are out now. Oh my gosh, when I tell you, if you are about to have a baby and you want something to read that will help you stay awake at night, that will make you chuckle, that will just be like a feel-good story. And there are sad points in it as well, but if you want something like that, read this series. And I really think that one of the reasons I'm liking it so much is because as a kid, I loved the Dear America series, and this just feels like an adult version of that to me, and I am absolutely loving it. So we're following Emma in London society. I think it's like early 1900s, late 1800s, I would say. Late 1800s, I think, is where we're at in this. And she is 20 years old, hasn't come of age yet. She is supposed to inherit this home, but her cousin is living there and he is just abysmal. He's awful. And to sort of put up with him, and a series of events ensues because of that. The book is her journals. So you're reading everything that happens through her perspective, through her journals, what she's deciding to tell us. And it is amazing. It is absolutely amazing. I have been flying through them. I actually just finished the 5th one this morning, so I only have 3 left. I'm very sad about it. All of the hype is worth it. It's so enjoyable, and I think I would have spent a lot less time on my phone, truthfully, postpartum, if I had this and was in my, I think I would have finished it in the first month, but I think I would have not felt like I needed to be on my phone to stay awake at night with some points, because I would have read them. Because even now I'm reading it every spare moment I get and right before bed, and sometimes I'll stay up late, which I shouldn't. I am loving it, absolutely loving it. If I haven't said that 45 times already, here is number 46. I love it. So if you have not picked up that series, I highly suggest it. I already lent the first one to my mom, which I think speaks to how much I loved it. And what I said to her was, I really hope you love it, because I need someone to talk about this with, who also understands it. And she loved it too. And I don't really think it's the type of book she usually reads. I think if you don't think you're going to like it, or you're not sure, just give it a try. Maybe order the first one. I know they're really hard to come by, I think, because they're so popular right now. My libraries don't have it, but maybe listen to the first one on audio. I know that I will already be reading it. Like, truthfully, I think that after I finish book 8, I think I'm just going to listen to them. I love them. I can't speak highly about them enough. Oh, and finally, I almost forgot. I did finish Don Quixote, which I wanted to throw myself a little parade for doing that, honestly, especially during this season. And it's not because I didn't enjoy the book. I want to make that clear. It's not because I didn't enjoy the book. I did thoroughly enjoy the book. It does require extra brain power to read the book. And I think part of it is because it's long. Like, let's not shy around it. It's like 1,000 pages. The other part of it is just because it was written a long time ago and people speak differently, and it's translated. So while I read the Penguin Classics version, and while that translation is a good translation and it's one of the ones that is recommended to read, it's still translated, right? So it's not in its original form. So that could make it more challenging to read. And then the other thing that makes it challenging is because I'm doing the book list and the Well-Educated Mind, I'm not just reading through the books, I'm also narrating after each chapter. So sometimes that kind of makes it a drag when I can't just, read 5 chapters. It's like I read a chapter, write about what happened, read a chapter, write about what happened. And that's just for my own personal education. I'm doing that for myself. You don't necessarily have to do that. So I think that's part of the reason why it took so long. I mean, truthfully, I think it took me 6 months to read this book. I think if I remember correctly, I started in October. So I think 6 months. Hopefully the rest of the books on this list don't take as long, but I was very happy that I was able to finish it. Would I recommend it as something to read postpartum? No, not unless you're used to reading books like that. If you are going to read it postpartum, just be gracious with yourself and know that you're probably not going to finish a 1,000-page classic the first month after your baby is born, right? Like that's probably not realistic. I would recommend it, but I wouldn't necessarily recommend it in this season of life. Thank you so much for joining me today. Just remember, go outside, touch some grass, read a book. The internet will be here when you get back, and I will see you next time. Cheers.